Glass panel doors are a beautiful addition to cabinet making projects, and with the right tools, they're no more difficult to make than conventional cabinet doors. The CMT glass panel door set is the perfect choice for making glass panel doors in your shop. The set consists of 3 cutters: an end grain cutter, which is used to coat the ends of the pieces to match the long grain cut, a long grain cutter, which produces a decorative profile on the front of the pieces and a rabbet on the back for the glass. Finally, a slot cutter, which is used to cut a slot in the door frame parts for a glass retainer. Your completed door consists of a decorative profile on the front of the door, end grain on the rails that's been coped to match the long grain on the stiles, and a rabbet on the back of the door which receives the glass panel. Before beginning work on your doors, make this simple shop-made coping sled. It'll be used to secure your rails for machining and to prevent chip out on the exit side of the cut as you're coping end grain. The glass panel door set works best in material that's approximately 3/4 of an inch thick. Be sure the resulting rabbet is deep enough to accept the glass for your project and the glass retainer. The first setup step will be setting the height of the coping cutter. When this cutter is properly set in 3/4 inch material, it will result in a lip on the fronts of the doors approximately 1/8 inch thick. Install the end grain cutter in your router table. Then insert a piece of test material into the coping sled. Set the height of the end grain cutter shooting for the 1/8 inch lip on the bottom face of the test piece. Position the fence using a straight edge. Make the face of the fence even with the ball bearing on the cutter. With the test piece secured in the sled, make a test cut. Do not cut all the way through the test piece and into the sled yet. Now you need to check your work. The lip on the front of the door should be about 1/8 of an inch thick. If it's too small, raise the bit. Too large, lower it. The tongue here on the back of the door leads to the rabbet in the next step. It needs to be large enough to accept the glass and the glass retainer. Once you've got the height of the cutter correctly set, go ahead and cut through the end grain and into the coping sled. This creates, in the coping sled, a setup gauge you can use the next time you use the cutter. Before machining your door frame pieces, take the time to mark an X on the back face of each piece. They'll all be fed on the router table, good face down, so you should be able to see the X throughout your cutting. Now you're ready to secure your rails in the coping sled and cut both ends of each piece. Install the long grain cutter in your router table and note that there's a ball bearing between the top and bottom halves. Set the height of the end grain cutter using a rail you cut in the previous step. Make the bottom of the top cutter even with the bottom of the tongue on the end of the rail. Position the fence by making the face of the fence even with the ball bearing. Add featherboards to your router table and using a push stick, make a test cut of a piece of scratch. Now you can check your work by comparing the long grain cut to the end grain cut that you made previously. The faces of the two pieces should be even or very close to even. If the face of the piece with the end grain cut is too high, you need to slightly raise the long grain cutter. If the face of the piece with the long grain cut is too high, lower the bit slightly. Before making a long grain cut on your door parts, take the time to make a zero clearance fence on your router table. This will significantly reduce chip out on the exit side of the router bit. Now you're set to make the long grain cut on all 4 of your door frame parts. In order to set the height of the slot cutter, which is used to make a slot for the rubber glass retainer, you'll need to scribe the thickness of your glass onto one of your door frame pieces. Install the slot cutter and set the height so the bottom of the cutter is even with the pencil line. Position the face of the fence even with the ball bearing on the cutter and make a test cut in a piece of scrap. Confirm that the slot is even with or slightly above the back face of your glass. Make height adjustments to the slot cutter as necessary before cutting your door frame parts. When the height of the slot cutter is correct, machine only the door frame rails from end to end. Since the slot is cut from end to end on the rails, it shows through the end grain, but this will later be hidden against the edge of the stiles. A stopped cut is required on the stiles so that it won't show. Set up the stopped cut by measuring the overall width of your rails and dividing that number in two. With the router unplugged, spin the router bit so that the carbide cutter is close to the fence. Then measure from the cutter, marking 1/2 the width of your rails right on the face of the fence. Repeat this layout process on the other side of the fence, making a second mark. These marks indicate the starting point and the stopping point of the cuts on the stiles. Slot the stiles by aligning the end of the stile with the lead pencil mark and beginning the cut. Continue cutting until the trailing end of the stile is aligned with the second pencil mark, and then stop. This technique guarantees that the slot will be stopped short of the end grain of the stiles, but you've created a long enough slot that it will receive the rubber glass retainer. Assemble the door, then completely sand and finish it before installing the glass. Using a utility knife, cut the retainer so it fits from inside corner to inside corner. Go ahead and cut all 4 pieces. The barb on the rubber retainer is designed to be a snug fit into the slot you cut on the inside of the door frame. Use a putty knife to press the barbs on the retainer into the mating slot. It's best if you use the knife to start the top of the barb and then the bottom of the barb before pressing on the face of the retainer itself to completely seat the barbs. Repeat this process down the length of the retainer. After the retainer has been completely installed, you can cut the corners at a 45-degree angle using a utility knife in order to create a miter. Cut a matching miter on the next piece of retainer and repeat the installation process. You can also make wooden glass retainers to match your door frame. Start by installing a 1/4-inch roundover bit in the router table. Plane a piece of stock to 7/16-inch thickness and round over both corners. This provides 2 rounded over corners which can be ripped in order to provide the required glass retainer. Rip 1 piece from each edge. With the first 2 glass retainers cut from the rounded over board, you can return the board to the router table and round over the corners again, providing a space to cut off 2 more glass retainers. Assemble and finish the door frame and pre-finish the wooden retainers. Now you can cut the retainers to fit and tack them in on the back side of the door frame to firmly hold the glass in place. This completes the glass panel door made the CMT way, the easy way.